End of May. The USA allows Ukraine to strike Russian territory with the weapons they provided. So what has changed on the front since this permission? Why haven't the Allies taken another important step yet? And what do Ukrainian military say about the new conditions? On May 29th, the Washington Post published a call from Achilles, commander of Ukrainian 92nd Brigade's Drone Battalion.
My people are told to defend Ukraine, Europe and the West with one hand tied behind their back. If we were given the green light, we could easily destroy enemy electronic warfare systems, command centers and missile launch platforms. We know where they all are. We could stop the invaders.
We will return to Achilles later, but for now... After 27 months of prohibition, the Allies finally allowed strikes on enemy territory, and the Ukrainians did strike. For example, in the Belgorod region, the S-400 air defense system burned spectacularly after the HIMARS strike. And Sky News reported on the first strike of a Ukrainian plane, an enemy command center was hit. Analysts of Defense Express determined that these were American GMLRS missiles launched from HIMARS. These missiles carry tungsten fragments that disperse over a large area upon impact. The strike neutralized not only several S-400 launchers, but also radar equipment. Now Ukrainians plan to systematically drive Russian forces out from the border area. For this purpose, they will use European and American artillery systems and launchers, as well as air-to-ground missiles. For example, the American M777 howitzer has a range of 24 kilometers, or up to 40 kilometers with smart Excalibur munitions. The Slovak Zuzana and German Panzerhaubitze 2000 can fire at 40 kilometers, the French César at about 46 kilometers, and the Swedish Archer at 60 kilometers. However, HIMARS has a strong chance of becoming the headliner of the strike forces. With its GMLRS missiles, it can strike targets at a range of 80 kilometers. That said, the USA did not allow Ukraine to use long-range ATACMS missiles. The UK and France, however, did not directly prohibit Ukrainians from using their air-to-surface Storm Shadow or Scalp missiles. The export modifications of these missiles reach a range of 250 to 290 kilometers. Another innovation is currently being tested in the war in Ukraine. Ground-launched small-diameter bombs, or GLSDBs, proved ineffective as they were downed by Russian jammers. Instead, the less-known small-diameter glide bomb, GBU-39, showed incredible effectiveness. Almost 90% of the dropped bombs hit their target. GBU-39 was also adapted for ground use in HIMARS launchers, a development that Pentagon representatives say will increase the range of rocket artillery. But why do Ukrainians need to strike Russian territory at all? It is actually necessary not just to destroy the enemy. In May, Russia launched Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, located just a few dozen kilometers from the border. Moreover, preparations for the attack were carried out right before the eyes of Ukrainians. Rob Lee, a senior fellow.
Russia could keep its artillery right across the border. It could keep air defense, electronic warfare, command and control there. It had maybe a degree of kind of sanctuary.
Ukrainians saw all this, but their hands were tied. Old Soviet weapons did not reach there, and Western ones were prohibited to use. What did this lead to? Russia occupied another 200 square kilometers again. Several villages were destroyed by glide bombs and artillery. The almost 20,000-strong town of Vovchansk became a battlefield and practically ceased to exist. Now the situation may change. The Russian offensive is already stalled. Most of Ukraine's allies have given permission to freely use their weapons. Russia constantly threatens everyone with words. But how did they actually respond? With a deep fake, for instance. The US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller allegedly proposed to target the Russian border town of Belgorod. It is not the first time Russia loudly warns about something and does nothing. Same thing happened with the tank coalition, ATACMS and F-16s. Provision of all these weapons was caused by the intensification of Russian attacks on the battlefield, and all this helped to level this situation at least a little. However, all this time the West has only been reacting, not anticipating events. But here's what Ukraine could actually achieve if it no longer had to fight with one hand behind its back. Crimea is a Ukrainian peninsula that Russia has occupied since 2014. It is Putin's pride. It hosts multiple Russian military bases, airfields, and a naval fleet. But now all of this is under threat. Almost half of the once formidable Russian Black Sea Fleet is already at the sea bottom. On April 17th, base, helicopters, an S-400 battery, and a command post were damaged. On May 15th and 16th, after similar strikes, as well as the so-called Russian Patriot, the S-400 air defense system. Military targets in Crimea are attacked by Ukraine with a deadly combination of its own naval and air drones, as well as long-range missiles. However, the USA did not allow fire and ATACMS in the north of Ukraine. What does the White House have to say about it? The USA has not ruled out the possibility of expanding its permissions in the future. However, this might again be done in response to another Russian escalation. Meanwhile, thanks to the new permission, Ukrainians are making another move in response. Do you remember the heartfelt cry of the Ukrainian officer Achilles? It seems that something has changed now.
The ground under the occupiers' feet is starting to burn. The equipment, artillery, S-300 and S-400 systems, electronic warfare means. All this is starting to ignite. We have already inflicted heavy strikes in certain sectors. As a result, Kharkiv has not been shelled for almost a week. It is important that in the near future our allies allow us to use long-range weapons exclusively against military targets. We must strike the enemy in its lair and fight the root of the problem, not its consequences.